It's Caroline and Ezra on the Evening Edition's Top 5 at 5. Moving to our next story, takes a look at Pornhub. Caroline, are you familiar with the pornographic website Pornhub?
You certainly told me about this before.
Yes. That's right. Well, a little while ago on Wednesday, March the 8th, that was International Women's Day. The edition of Pornhub Insights, they took a look at how women consumed porn and how different it's been against their male counterparts. And more specifically from this particular report, they took a look at, at least the local newspapers took a look at how Malaysian women consume Pornhub. About 84% of Malaysian women look at Pornhub using a mobile device.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. So how women and men use technology differently is something that has been studied for a while now. And it's pretty cool stuff. According to internetserviceproviders.org, women use pins and passwords less than men, about 2% less. Women are more covetous of online reputations, a little bit more careful there. Women do 62% of the sharing on Facebook. So, you don't really think about it that much, I suppose, when you're using social media.
Yeah.
But these distinctions, have a great impact.
Yeah, and, I think it's changed, these sort of patterns and trends have changed dramatically over the past while, simply because of how people are consuming content at this juncture. Worldwide, there are all sorts of different stats about how folks in the United States are consuming internet porn against Britain and a lot of other countries. Now, to analyze some of these stats, we have Dr. Martha Lee on the line with us. She is a clinical sexologist from Eros coaching over in Singapore. Dr. Martha, thank you very much for speaking with us. First of all, do you find it at all surprising that more women than men are using their mobile phones to access porn?
No, it's not surprising for me, considering the fact that women are much more social than men. There's this need to keep in touch with people, from texting, from keeping in touch with our friends, to making appointments and using the apps that are available to look at videos and be entertained. So accessing porn through mobile devices is just an extension of how we are using it to navigate and make sense of the world that we live in.
And is there any correlation between the amount of porn consumed and, say, actual sexual activity? Because studies have shown that across the globe, sexual activity has decreased significantly in comparison with previous decades.
No, I don't think that there is a correlation between the use of porn and lack of sex. In fact, I know of several of my clients, especially women, I would add, who actually use porn to support them in getting themselves excited and prepare themselves for sex. So the use of fantasy, the use of porn supports us in our sexual desire, helps us to be more horny, and actually could potentially lead to more sex rather than decrease it. So I don't see porn use as a substitution of actually having sex.
Dr. Martha, the report also shows that the largest proportion of female smartphone users are millennials. That's aged between 18 and 34. Does that signify or signal anything?
Our millennials are brought up in a generation where they are very comfortable with the use of technology, especially electronic devices. And they seek out information using their devices. And porn is also a point of reference to the lack of sex education that is available. So the millennials would be seeking out information on how to probably engage in sexual activity through the watching of porn. And so I'm not surprised that the millennials are watching more porn on mobile devices than people of other age groups.
And finally, with porn becoming, I suppose, increasingly accessible to many people, could this possibly lead to a rise in porn addiction?
We use the word sex addiction and porn addiction really rather loosely. And I want to make clear that according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, there is no such thing as porn addiction or sex addiction. In fact, what this is actually trying to say is that it is not a mental disorder. There are people who have compulsive behavior tendencies which means they tend to overdo anything that they do anyway, from alcohol, from drugs, and by extension, sex. But actually, sex addiction by itself is not an addiction. It's actually a behavior that is for people who are already compulsive. And this applies to a minority of the population. I think that we really need to understand that just because a person watches porn, it doesn't make them an addict. And when they watch a lot of porn, it also doesn't make them an addict, as long as they are not doing this excessively. By excessive, I mean to the extent that they cannot function. For instance, not being able to go to work, not being able to shower, not being able to eat. That is the kind of level of compulsive behavior we are talking about. And it doesn't apply to the majority of us.
Dr. Martha Lee, thank you very much for joining us. That was Dr. Martha Lee, a clinical sexologist and one of the speakers actually at our Health and Living event, Creating Urban Happiness. That's happening on the 8th of April, bfm.my/health.
However,
for more
just
information.
Very quickly, a word of caution, and this came out from Blue Code, which is a web security and optimization company, and this came out in 2013. So apparently, watching porn is bad for your smartphone in that when you go to these sites,
malware.
It would appear that the risk of inadvertently downloading malware to your devices increases threefold, actually, so it makes it a really big threat. So when you click a link on a mobile phone, it's harder to know what form of sort of Russian roulette they're playing. So, now that we've reached the acceptable quota of vice, with porn and also gambling, we can move on.
Well, what's interesting about what Dr. Martha said is that because there's a lack of sex education in general about how people try to make sense of it, people go to websites like Pornhub. But what's also interesting about what Pornhub is doing right now, they're actually expanding their current content, which is pretty predictable, to a completely educational, informative arm. And so they've actually begun this process where they are attracting people to watch porn, obviously, but they're trying to inform people through legitimate means about what they should and shouldn't do when it comes to sex education.
I don't know how I feel about that. I'm feeling very skeptical.
I think it's a great thing because Pornhub has gone on to get some of the best psychiatrists and the best sex educators in the United States, because you already have a lot of the eyeballs over there already. And I think what's always important is that you transfer those eyeballs to something like education.
I'd be interested to find out whether or not those eyeballs are actually on those pieces of research.
I think, we can...
Debatable.
Debatable. We
Yeah.
can continue the discussion off air, I guess, Caroline. All right.